Have you ever been quoted a price by a marketing agency and thought, there's no way I'm spending that much money on internet marketing? Let's talk about cost versus value. Hello, I'm John Delancey, founder of White Raven Technology, a bespoke legal marketing agency, and your host for the Legal Marketing Minute, our weekly video blog and podcast series devoted to discussing the tips, tricks, and trends to help your law firm succeed online. This week, as I mentioned, we'll be discussing the idea of cost versus value, or more specifically, the cost of marketing services versus the value you receive from them, or profit. Now, the reason I want to talk about this is that a few weeks ago, I had a couple of strategy sessions with an attorney, and she was excited and engaged, and I was excited and engaged, and I did some research on her firm and her practice areas, and really came up with a strategy that I thought was going to be great for what she needed. It was going to be based around Google AdWords as a central advertising platform, So when we met again to discuss my recommendations, again, she was excited and engaged, and she liked the numbers that I was quoting her on how many searches we could see and how many ad clicks we could expect to get out of those and leads we could expect to deliver to her door. And then I mentioned the cost of the services. And she got very quiet. She didn't overreact in any way or anything like that. It was just, I could tell from the change in her voice that she had already decided there was no way she was going to spend that much money on internet advertising. And that is my fault. I did not explain to her adequately the value of the services that I was providing her or recommending that I provide to her. So that's what I want to talk about today. Now, in this case, with the attorney I was speaking to a few weeks ago, I determined, after figuring out what her client lifetime value, or CLV, is, and we'll talk about CLV in a moment, but after discovering what that number was, I realized that I only needed to deliver her one new client per month, and all of her marketing services, including both my fees as an agency and Google's fees to actually run the advertising, would be completely covered. That is, one client per month meant that she was breaking even on her marketing cost. And if we're only delivering one client a month, something's wrong. Now, what that means is if I delivered her 2 clients a month, she's seeing a 100% return on her investment. That means for every $1 she spends, she makes $1 in profit. Not breaking even, but actually $1 in profit. So let's really break this down and talk about what CLV is and what ROI is and how to figure it out for your law firm. Now, client lifetime value, or CLV, again, is the amount of revenue you expect your firm to earn over the lifetime of a client's engagement with you. Now, for some practice areas, like personal injury, of course, things like that, you're really only going to engage a client one time. Or you only expect to engage a client one time. So you would consider the value of taking on that one case as the CLV for that client. But for other practice areas, like family law and things like that, you might expect to see the same client multiple times for all of their legal needs, whether it's starting a business or signing a prenup or a divorce agreement or custody arrangements, basic wills planning, whatever it might be. You might expect multiple engagements with that client. So what you need to figure out in that case is what is the average revenue you expect to earn over all of the engagements, over the entire lifetime of that client. Now, once you know your CLV, you can begin to move forward and start calculating things like your ROI. Now, in this case, with the attorney that I met a few weeks ago, she had her CLV down pat. She knew for every practice area how much money she could expect to make off of that client. And in her case, these were disparate practice areas, so we weren't talking about the same clients in both cases for the most part. So I was very excited. We had the CLV in hand, and now we can move forward and talk about ROI. So the second piece before we actually get to ROI is the cost of marketing. And that needs to include the fees you pay to the marketing agency or the salaries you pay to staff members to manage your marketing. And it also needs to include the cost of advertising or content production or whatever else you might be doing. So in this case, the cost that this attorney would have paid to Google for advertising on the AdWords platform. So once we have the CLV and we have the cost of marketing, we're ready to determine what her ROI could be. Now, for simplicity's sake, let's assume very simple, big numbers that are round and easy to follow. These are not real numbers. These are not what I actually quoted her or anything like that. But for the simplicity of an example, we're going to assume that the CLV for one client is $5,000, or $5,000 is the revenue you expect to earn for every one client who walks in the door. And let's assume as well that the cost of marketing per month is a total of $5,000 between the agency fees and the advertising funds paid to AdWords. So we know our numbers, we know what those numbers mean. Let's talk about ROI. The formula for ROI is the revenue for a time period minus the cost of marketing for that time period divided by the cost of marketing for the time period. So let's assume month number 1, we earn this attorney 1 new client. Okay, things are very simple to calculate at this point. We say $5,000 of revenue minus $5,000 of cost divided by $5,000 of cost. And this very clearly gives us a big 0. What does that actually mean? That is a 0% return on investment. That means you did not earn any profit, but you also did not lose money on your marketing expenditure. So, again, if we had doubled that to 2 clients for month number 1, we would see a 1 or a 100% return on investment. That means for every $1 we spent on marketing, we made $1 in profit for that time period. Now, let's take things out a little bit further. Let's say we're at the 6-month mark now, and we want to know what our overall ROI is for the entire marketing campaign over the last 6 months. Let's say over that 6-month period, we've earned our attorney 20 new clients, okay? So again, let's apply the ROI formula. This means we have $5,000 of CLV, or lifetime value, times 20 new clients, which is $100,000 in expected revenue, minus $5,000 a month in cost times 6 months, or $30,000 cost, divided by $30,000 cost. What this results in is $70,000 gross profit divided by $30,000 in cost, or a 233% return on investment. Again, what that means is that for every $1 spent, the attorney earns $2.33 in gross profit. Now, that was a lot of math to make a very simple point. We should not focus on the individual numbers within the ROI calculation, neither cost nor the actual revenue earned. It's too easy to look at cost and say that's way too much money to be spending on internet marketing. It's also very easy to look at revenue and say, holy crap, we're making a lot of money, but without considering the cost of making that money. ROI is where the value in marketing is uncovered. And when you're meeting with a marketing agency, whether it's in the interview process to determine whether you want to work with them, or it's 6 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years down the road, if the marketing agency cannot tell you what the ROI is, cannot explain the value of the marketing that you are considering or that you have engaged, then you need to ask that question. They need to be able to tell you that. Only by knowing the ROI that you can expect and what the ROI actually is over time can you make an informed decision about your marketing. Well, folks, that's going to wrap it up for this week. I hope you've enjoyed this rather quick discussion about cost versus value in marketing. If you have any questions at all about this discussion, please let us know in the comments here on YouTube or on our blog at whiteraventechnology.com. We would love to discuss these things with you. And until next week, happy marketing.